So I think we can make a start for tonight and then move through because we have actually a packed session today. So I want to welcome everyone tonight to this session where we explore what sustainability means in the sense of renovating, new building, and how do we bring together climate action, sustainability, and future-proofed homes. So setting the benchmark for affordable, efficient homes tonight. Um, Before we jump into the topic, I want to acknowledge also country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, Evitat acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aborigine and Torres Strait Island people today. We are in particular here to listen, learn, and build a future together. So I welcome everyone who is joining us currently to this packed session tonight with some really interesting topics to understand better. How do we make it actually possible to afford renovations and also new homes? How do we achieve these high-performing, future-proofed homes? And how do we realize actually that dream home we all want to have? So I welcome Michael Drage, award-winning passive house and net zero building designer. We will hear in a few minutes more about Michael, and we will also go through a lot of examples designed and built from his practice. I also want to welcome Simona Schenko, Green Design Studio, certified passive house building designer and mom of two. Simona is a long-standing supporter of Evitat, and I welcome you back also as a co-host tonight. And I also want to welcome Danielle Beaton, who is a dear member of the Evitat team and managing all your questions in the back. So feel free to jump in and ask anything which we can actually pass on to Michael or also to Simona. So before we dive deep into all these nitty-gritties, we do want to talk a little bit about what actually sustainable home means and why do we need to redefine it. And Michael, we had a chat prior actually this session. We had also scratched a little bit on the topic of what is happening currently in construction and in fulfilling that Australian dream. And we talked particularly around the size of new homes. So in that context, what are your thoughts around the size of new homes and in particular in comparison to international standards? And I will then tap a little bit also how that actually aligns to the general climate actions and what do we need to consider?
Okay, thank you again for the introduction and having me along here. Now, the first words that you have from me on here probably shouldn't be rude ones when I talk about the scale of the building that we do here compared to everybody else, but they probably should be rude ones. We build the biggest homes per capita in the world, quite substantially. I can see a mouse floating around over there, and you can see to the right-hand side, that we're substantially. It's ridiculous that we're 10% more than the US. And my wife's from Canada, and they have some pretty big homes over there, and it's amazing just how large we build per capita.
Kind of double to Germany, which is shocking.
Yeah, I was over in Poland having a look at some factories going back a couple of weeks ago, and I met with a guy who was running a team of 250 salespeople. So this guy was making some serious money. And he was very proudly showing me his new home that he was building, and it was all glass and all that. It was a very cool design. And at the end of it, he's like, and it's 100 square meters. Mm. And it was like a badge of honor that it was 100 square meters. And I almost, lost my beer laughing. When I tried to explain to him what was happening in Australia, they just couldn't understand. So I think from a sustainability point of view, this is number one. Not building is first, obviously, when you go through everything. Not doing anything is the first thing. But given that we actually need the new homes, we do need to do something. But reducing the size is number one. It doesn't matter it does matter with the other components. But if we can change that to German size, right, it doesn't have to quite go down to Polish size, but going down to German size at least, then you're at half the emissions. So, we're probably not going to do that here. In the short term, and planning regulations and things like that. You and I had a chat about that during the week.
Exactly.
I'm based here in Canberra. We do stuff all around the country, but based here in Canberra, and there's so many 1,000 square metre, the old quarter-acre block, where you can only have one home and maybe a little granny flat sitting on it, in very close to CBDs. Why can't we change these things? Why can't we do a little 120, or why can't we split those blocks? And these zoning changes, I think, would be a major driver of scale.
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. I think there is an opportunity to think about just a new approach to also a little bit more density, and I think many other countries are tackling that as well. But good design doesn't necessarily mean big or large sizes in homes. A good design can very much redefine space and provide an absolutely efficient and really nice space as well, at 130 square meters, and being absolutely sufficient for a family of 3 or 4 people. So I think there's a lot to learn from that, and I absolutely agree also. And I think that's another area we will be tapping into in a few minutes, is also the opportunity to create actually a healthy budget. So a budget which includes all opportunities around energy efficiency, good material choices, and really to have a home that doesn't cost the earth in the first place, and in the long run, that actually includes a lot of benefits. So maybe just to also tap again into the context of climate actions, we have science-based targets. They have published, for example, some recommendations where renovations and homes should sit in terms of the embodied carbon. That means every single kilogram of energy which goes into materials and upfront emissions. And by 2030, that number is somewhere between 174 to 200 and something, because there's 2 specific calculations. So, and with that, I want to also put that in a context, because we are somewhere between hundreds, nearly 80 to up to 1 ton per kilo, basically 1 ton per CO2 emissions per square meter. So, and this is exactly our issue, because we are also facing a contradiction in some ways, actually, in the built environment, because we know that we have a huge gap to fill, and homes are high in demand. And this is exactly what Michael was saying, bringing in, utilizing that space around the existing space we are already actually having at hand with our homes is probably one of the biggest opportunities. So Michael, you have mentioned to me also another issue, which is really a big topic actually to unpack. And it's also there's also a research paper from the Curtin University. Maybe you can give us a little bit more details to this.
Sure. So I've been in this is my second career, and I was in the investment world for 25 years beforehand. So I'm a bit of a research head. So when I sort of got into all of this, and it's probably how I ended up in doing Passive House as well. But when I got into all of this, you know, I sort of researched as much as what we possibly could. And this research paper by Curtin University, and Daniel, when I sent it to you, I do hope you had something strong when you first read that. So I did suggest that. I'm not sure whether you did, but so this just knocked me for six, because coming from a different industry, it just doesn't make sense. And so, for those who may not have read it, what it basically was the Curtin University in WA published a paper in 2020, and they were basically doing as-built testing as opposed to as designed. And what most people, the people here will know, but most people don't understand, is that the star rating, and this star, we've got a 7-star rating, is actually given off the design, not actually off what is built. So they should be the same. You would have thought they were the same, but they generally aren't. So when Curtin University did the research showed that the houses were 20 to 80% underneath what that was actually designed to. So on average being 50, but it meant that if you had a 6-star home, because back then that 6-star was minimum, you could have actually had a 1.6-star home, which is nuts, absolutely crazy. Now, coming from this other industry, this just doesn't make any sense. So for me, from the investment world, if you do that once, you get sued. You do that a couple of times, you're broke. You do that systemically, you go to jail. But when I would go and talk to the builders here in Canberra and in Sydney, wherever, yeah, their comment was, yeah, sounds about right. So my brain just doesn't compute like that. So it just made no sense. So when I did further research, it seems that we weren't alone. So what that came to was the UK was 60 to 70%, the US was about 50%. So in a lot of the similarly, let's call it Caucasian world, we were ending up with a very, very similar number. So I just cannot for the life of me understand how that cannot be tested and checked. I have taken it to governments on both sides and to lobbyists on both sides that I happen to know, and nobody is interested in challenging it. Nobody's interested in doing it because of the political fallout from the NBA and the HIA. You know, the CFMEU probably doesn't have the clout that it used to have, but the NBA and HIA do. And when I've spoken to most builders, and I can see Simone nodding away there as well, they don't even know, most of them don't even know how to get the 7-star, let alone, you know, actually hitting 7-star. So, you know, we do 1,000, 1,500 energy reports a year. So we get to see a lot of what's going on. And we also do passive house modelling sitting behind there. And when you do a star rating, for example, the air tightness of a home has no variance or no bearing on the actual rating. Now, they are looking at potentially changing that if you do get a blower door test, and I'm hoping that people who are here may know what a blower door test is. But we know from our research that the reason why the NATERS rating systems don't allow for being able to tweak the air tightness testing is because it's very, very easy to make your home perform really, really well by changing the air tightness. But if there's no test, then everybody's going to bodge it. So everybody's going to have an 8-star home because the energy assessors are going to turn down the air tightness, and it's not going to get tested. So that's why NATERS doesn't allow it. Now, sorry, I'm on a monologue here. Sorry.
No, that's
sorry.
Great insights.
If I had a high horse, I'd be sitting on it right now. So NCC, the construction code, actually says that it's meant to be 10 air changes per hour. So how much of the volume of the space changes every hour is 10. Germany, I think, is 3, Simone, from what I understand. Simone? Yeah, I think it's 3.
1, 2, or 3, yeah.
Yeah. Passive house is 0.6. It's obviously quite extreme. So my business partner on the energy side, he's like one of the spoken words on air tightness. He does like 40% of the commercial builds for air tightness in Australia. He sent out a new guy just to test a few homes, new homes, brand new, 24, 23, and 26 air changes per hour.
Mm.
So even compared to code, these were having to heat at least twice the volume of air every hour. So when we don't have this back-end testing, when there's no back-end testing on the home, how the hell can we understand how our house is going to perform? Simona, it looks like you want to jump in there.
Yeah. I was just thinking, for people, if you imagine air changes per hour, one air change per hour means that all the air inside your house gets exchanged once within the hour. Now imagine 20 times. So all the air inside your house gets exchanged 20 times in an hour. No wonder you keep heating, and the house just doesn't get warm, or the second you turn off the heater, it gets cold again, because the air just goes out. This is why in the passive house industry or high performing space, we often refer to Australian homes to glorified tents, because they're nothing more than glorified tents if the air is just flowing through them like crazy. So yeah, 20 is quite shocking.
Yeah, and maybe just to add to that, if we would basically put, like a thermal, like a heat camera in front of these typical homes here in Australia, they would glow as a Christmas tree, probably often enough. And that's exactly where all our energy goes out through every single little gap, and and also through the underperforming walls, ceilings, and even floors. And this is really a waste. It's a waste in energy. It's a waste in heating, cooling. And I think what we are seeing at the moment, for example, in terms of climate change, and we did talk about this in plenty of the last webinars, particularly, climate change is putting a lot of pressure in future in particular, but also, for example, what we see at the moment, the August has been one of the hottest actually in history. And maybe not so much for Victorians, but it was really warm. And I think what we see is these changes in patterns and periods where we will be facing really, really hot weather and stormy weather, and maybe even cold periods, far colder than we have been exposed to. And this is exactly where homes all of a sudden don't perform really well. And anything we can improve to make them low energy, really well performing, is actually really desirable. And that will also shape the future of the property market. So thinking wisely around what you are investing and how you invest in your home and what you want to get out of it is the key topic for tonight, I think. So I'm really excited. Michael.
Would you mind if I just add something to that?
Yeah,
Right. I know
absolutely.
there's a few things to get to, but I also saw Daniel has put up the percentage of people, and half the people here today are architects and designers, and half, and then 25% homeowners, 25% builders. So just sort of talking back to that, I met with a certifier, because we've had a few grumps with some of the local certifiers here, trying to work out how the hell we can actually get these things built better. And we probably went to the #1 certifier in our region the other day, had a good meeting with them. And I said to them, how could we actually put in another, could we look at putting in another inspection to make sure that the insulation is put in, to make sure that the windows are actually taped correctly and all the rest of it? And he looked at me, or they looked at me, and it's like, well, I've never done that before. These guys are probably the top people around this region. And who would set the standard as to what's right or not? Because there is no standard. We don't have a standard to actually say, well, this is the right way to do it. And it was just amazing, absolutely amazing that this was part of the conversation. And so, like, well, why don't we agree on some standards, and why don't we look at a way that you can do 1 or 2 extra inspections on the way through? But there was no standard to check that the insulation was actually being installed properly, or that the window was actually taped properly or sealed properly. It was nuts.
Yep.
Again, from my old industry, this just does not make sense.
Absolutely. And I think, when we get back to even numbers, it doesn't make sense at all. Like we are, like, the property market in Australia is one of the most expensive. I mean, we are right behind Hong Kong and so on. Yeah. I think we should ask for more transparency. We should really be aware of what's going on and make sure that every dollar spent gets you what has been designed for. And this is exactly, Michael, where you have been spending a lot of time, to shape and put together some solutions. So here is your few minutes to tell us a little bit more, about your practice and everything else you're doing to make actually and to improve that area particularly.
Okay, thank you. I've just seen that we've already been going for quite a while, so I'll try to make this as quick as possible. So thank you. As mentioned, I come out of the investment world. This is my second career. So when I decided to work 2 days a week doing some design, which has not ended up being what it's been, I went and studied design because that had been a bit of a passion, but also through the investment businesses, we'd funded a lot of building. And my old area, we'd always looked at global best practice. So what was global best practice? How could we actually get there? So I then went and looked at it and said, right, where's the old Wayne Gretzky, where's the puck going? So people were worried about sustainability, energy efficiency, design, that whole pathway. I then did my research, and Passive House was where it came out. So I went and did the course. I don't know how, but passed. I actually was in the same course with Simona.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, we were some of the early ones. And so that was my baseline. So my baseline being that was really good because I didn't have to unlearn a whole lot of things, but it was really bad because I didn't have the understanding from previous areas. So we started doing a bit of design work, but I wanted to do the research. That research has developed into Efficient Habitat. So that now we've got like 5 or 6 people in that at the moment. We do about 1,000, 1,500 energy assessments every year. But it's basically, for me, that's basically our research hub. So yes, we get paid to do it, but it really is our research hub to see what's happening and where it's going. And this is really, where I see that we can make a difference, in that if we can coach builders, designers, clients to be able to not necessarily go from 7 stars to 10 stars, but can we go to 7.2, 7.4, 7.5? Even something a little bit better to start with is a lot more than not doing anything. But because we do the Passive House, we've got the EER, the NatHERS side of things, and the BASICs, and we're doing Section J, which is for commercial. It gives us a really good rounding around how we can make a house work. So going down that path through the research, and this is the crux of, I think, what we're talking about tonight, Sonia, as well, is what actually makes a house work, right? So this was because I come from another industry. It's like, I need to understand this, like what is really going to make a house work. And design is key, absolutely key. But for a given design, and Evertat is highly focused around renovations, right? But for a given design, when you get down to it, windows and air tightness are the 2 biggest drivers. Right, so everybody's going to put the insulation in. Everybody's going to, sort of have a bit of shading here and there, but windows and air tightness are the 2 major drivers. And air tightness for people is something that's difficult, but that people can do something relatively cheaply about. And my business partner Andrew, like I said, he's pretty much one of the spoken words on air tightness, so we pretty much got that covered. So we then started looking at, well, how do we get the better windows? And so we went down this rabbit hole, and where do the best ones come from, and how do we supply this for our clients? And at the same time, we were thinking about this built environment. How do we take risk out of it for clients? When I looked at taking risk out for You know, if we design an 8-star home, passive house, whatever, how do they get it? Prefab was the thing that came up. If something's built in a factory, it's hard to get wrong. If something's built by hand, it's harder to get right. So we looked at prefab, looked at windows, and somehow or other that developed into Net Zero Plus. And we're now bringing in prefab homes, or prefab panelized systems, not homes, but panel systems, and triple glazed, highly energy efficient windows out of Europe, which is why I was over there the other day. So these things have sort of developed out of me doing design 2 days a week to, I think, about 16 of us now. Very, very cross-disciplinary, but, you know, the core of the thinking is all around, you know, what is coming out of the research hub, which is the efficient habitat side of things. So,
yeah.
Sorry, that's 4 minutes. That was good. Got it out there.
This was pretty perfect. Yeah, thank you. I think it really delivers on that broad scale actually, and really, you know, to be able actually to improve the outcomes and also to deliver future-proofed homes, which is absolutely amazing to look at in terms of service delivery. So well done. And so we will start with one amazing project, and it taps really beautifully within the context what we encourage always to think, you know, repurposing an existing building, but adding a foundational renovation to it, making it or giving it a new lease of life. So this is a really bespoke project. Tell us more. And I love the before and after photos. So yeah, tell us a little bit what you have done, where it's located, and what was achieved.
So this is one of our first projects, and it's probably one of my favourite projects, to be honest. And we won an award for this for sustainability. So this is a couple, and this is in Chifley in Canberra. And when I say elderly, sort of late 60s, early 70s, they'd been in the place for 15 years. It was coming up to COVID, and they were just going to do a little light touch. Then because of COVID, they weren't travelling, so they had a little bit more money. But they had been living in this place for ages. It's a very small, so this style, anybody from Canberra on here will recognise these because they're everywhere. 100 square metres, very small footprint, upstairs, downstairs. But they could not go upstairs in summer. They had to drag a mattress downstairs to live in it downstairs in summer. And then they had a gas heater that they huddled around in winter, and they couldn't keep it warm. So they went from the sublime to the ridiculous, basically. So the house just didn't work at all. So this one, we actually didn't touch the building envelope at all, apart from getting new windows and doors installed. So we took this one from a 0 rated to 7.9 via NatEarth, but 6 in Canberra. So they rate them differently in the ACT. And the client spent about 200 on it. So they went at a livability level. So we opened it up. It was a bit of a rabbit warren as well. So we opened it up, did a little bit of design work. But the biggest thing was solar panels going on, very, you know, UPVC windows sitting on it. Filled up so we did blow-in insulation into the walls. We filled up the ceiling, and then we sprayed underneath the floor, and then we blocked up the chimney as well. So they went from, as I said, not being able to sleep in it to they turned the air conditioning on twice the following summer. And they were hardly using any energy at all in winter because what you're seeing there is from the north. So they got some really lovely north face sun in there. They got rid of that big tree. You know, it was creating some problems with all the foundations anyway. Not that we like to get rid of trees, but in this particular case, it worked. And their livability just went through the roof. And it was very, very cool to see, like really lovely couple. But I had always said to them, at some point, you're going to nick off and you're going to leave. No, we're not going to. Anyway, first granddaughter comes out and off they go, right? So off to Brisbane. And they were terrified that they'd overcommitted on on their spend. So this is where this one becomes really cool, is that 2 weeks before, sitting 2 streets back from this, same orientation, exactly the same thing. So these things are, you know, all through Canberra. It sold for $855, and it was on a better street than what these guys are on. These guys were told that maximum they would get was 1.06, and so that would be what it was plus their money back, and then they'd lose a bit because of agent fees. They got 1.21. So they far exceeded what everybody expected. And obviously very, very happy about it.
Yeah.
But when I I got permission to ring the purchasers and the people who were looking at it, and they said, yeah, well, part of it is design, which, thank you, that's nice. Didn't have to re-renovate. But the biggest thing was the energy efficiency and how the house felt. Right. So a lot of people talk about, oh, well, you know, I'm going to throw money into this thing and it's not going to be worth it, and I'm not going to get my money back. And well, there you go. There's one. And we were just really, really lucky that there was the exact same thing 2 streets back 2 weeks before as a direct comparison. So yeah, one of my favorite projects, and just to be able to get those numbers out of that was great. Now, very happy clients.
That's amazing project and an amazing outcome, I think. And it taps exactly in what we support and what we also want to give everyone at hand to think deeply actually around the future demand in the type of homes and how it might actually shape the property market. That said, I know that Canberra has the mandatory energy disclosure at sale and transaction of properties, but it is announced to be introduced to Victoria as well. And hopefully we will see that rolled out across many, many other states. And that will definitely shape the property market and really lift up those properties who have been thinking early on in investing actually in these improvements and capitalizing on these improvements, because these homes are performing incredible well. They don't require that much heating or cooling, and in the end, they cost really the ongoing costs are really, really low. So it's a well done project and really a great outcome achieved. So, Simona, is there anything on your side you want to ask?
Yeah, I really, really like this project because the thing is, as a designer or architect, it's always great to design those new shiny homes or something, but that's just not the reality. Most of Australian homes look exactly like this. They're really, really bad. You can't really live in them. It's just horrible. And it's amazing to see such an amazing but simple example how it can be done. And it's really not rocket science. And like you said, Michael, it's fairly simple, the steps you have to do, but just the outcome is astounding. And I think more people have to see it and more people just have to do it.
Thank you. I'd love to be able to get more people through it. We've spoken to government about it. We've spoken to a number of different groups around it, and like I said, as you say, it didn't cost a couple $100,000. It's still a couple $100,000. It's not it's not pocket change, but it's not a huge number when you're transforming it like this and to get the rate of return. So Sonia, you were also mentioning before about the ratings and what that's going to mean. Have you guys explored the Domain sustainability report that came out a couple of years ago around valuation differentials?
Not yet, but I was just about because you mentioned it as well. So that's definitely on the list, yeah.
Yeah, Daniel, I don't know whether you can now do your really quick typing to find it's the 2022 Domain Sustainability Report. You might be able to find it and chuck a link up there. So Domain, the real estate group, they did some testing, and for higher energy efficient homes, there was up to a 10%, on average, a 10% differential in the valuations. So one of my contentions, so this thing here, for example, you've got semis. You know, one on one side is worth 1.21 and the other one on the other side is worth 855,000. That's a massive, massive difference. But let's say the other one was renovated without all the upkeep, you know, it's worth 1.06. You know, this is now proven, I mean, that is, but across Australia through all the documentation through Domain, who get all their work through CoreLogic. So this is not heebie-jeebie stuff anymore. This is reality in the current built environment. The only place where I have this conversation and just cannot get, there's two places I cannot get the head through, is the volume builders, because the volume builders are wanting to deal in, you know, their clients mainly want the biggest thing possible on the smallest block of land for the cheapest possible price. So they just don't care. And the second one is the real estate agents, who mostly just cannot even understand how to spell green, let alone sustainability. So hopefully there's not too many real estate agents on this tonight. So they're the two areas that I've really struggled. Thank you, Daniel, for putting that up. They're the two areas I've really struggled to see it, but it's reality. They're the numbers that are coming through.
Yeah, and maybe to add to this, for example, the integrated logbook on Evitat, which is completely free to start, but there will be a lot also coming to pass on, for example, certain like changes and from design to even as built into the logbook. That is your opportunity actually in future then to connect, for example, to real estate listings and make it very easy, for example, to talk about all these incredible improvements and investments in energy efficiency, but also sometimes maybe in healthy building materials to highlight, let's say, you know, bespoke areas where you emphasized on healthy indoor air quality and so on. Simona, we did touch on these topics in previous webinars quite often. In particular, for example, for families who suffer from allergies, asthma, and so on. Like this is real value, and making it easy to understand that. That's exactly what we want to supply with the logbook data, and making it easy to demonstrate actually to future buyers. So yes, so feel free to, I will share that at the end of the webinar. But that's exactly why we came together on Evitat to really build that ecosystem and provide profound information and data and the transparency, and everyone involved, like for example, MicroDredge, I think is contributing with their work and really shaping the future of understanding what sustainable homes actually means. Yeah? So, but we have more actually in terms of what you're doing and what you're providing and the packages, the solution. So Solar Butterfly, take us a little bit through the concept.
Thank you. I'll talk through this in a minute. Sorry, I just want to go back on the other. So we're doing 4 renovations at the moment. 2 of them are design and construct and all the rest of it. But there's 2 more where we're just supplying the windows. And what we're doing with that, we're actually doing the energy ratings for them at the same time. And we're all 4 homes, we're taking from on average 1.4 to 1.5 star homes to 8+, right? Wow. Through changing what they're doing. And windows in particular can make an enormous difference. So we're taking them to 8+. And even the ones where they don't need to get, so when we're just doing the windows, what we're doing is we're supplying them with a NATO certificate. We're not actually putting it through, but we're showing the rating so that when they go to sell, they've actually got something to say, and we've had it rated, and this is what it sits at. And that's part of the thing that they've really loved. It's like, okay, well, not only is the house going to work really well, but, you know, I've spent $100 on it, but I'm actually going to get a hell of a lot more back on that as well. So yeah. It's, you know, coming from a finance background, if you can yeah, it's not all about return on investment, but if you can take the money argument out of it and you can actually make some money while doing the right bloody thing, then it works well. But it's going to be all four of those should be finished in the next month or two, and then we'll have some really interesting numbers and things to show people.
Awesome. That will be definitely for one of the next webinars.
Yeah.
All right.
We have before we get to this very exciting sounding solar butterfly house, we just have an interesting question in the chat that might be good to get to now before we move on too much. So we have a question from Brad in the audience who recently had a 7.9 star home built, which is great, but suffered kind of some of the same kind of issues with defects and stuff in the build process. And Brad's asking about kind of what assessments could he have done and that kind of thing. And obviously things like, passive house certification is one very kind of strict and expensive way to really ensure that your as design is as built. I might just read out Brad's question because not everyone can see it. So Brad asked, what type of assessment would I need to get to assess my property at the rating that the designer rated it at? I understand the blower door tests, but what else would be required? By the way, my house performs really well and I've incorporated everything you mentioned so far. It's all electric, solar, batteries, insulation. He's got an electric car and car charger. So yeah, what are the things that he could have done or could do now to have kind of made that all better?
Simona, I've been talking for 10 minutes straight. Why don't you have a crack at this one?
Yeah, I guess it depends a little bit. There are different ways how you can test it. I mean, for one is still do a blower door test, so test how airtight the house actually is. Because I'm not sure what actually the air change is, but at a certain point, your star rating goes down automatically, even if the insulation if the insulation and the windows are done exactly as specified. I don't know actually, Michael, do you know, is there a weight how much the star rating goes down per air change? I don't know if there's a rule.
There's no trigger at the moment. So on the whole of home, they're actually, because it's so easy to fudge, Simona, that's why they're really trying to stay away from it. But yeah, it's meant to be at 10.
Yeah. I think what you can do as well is there is the scorecard assessment, and
the scorecard is different. Yeah,
but we had the assessment, where we had some people talking about it, and so with the scorecard assessment, you rather look at what is your actual energy usage, how much do you pay in bills and whatnot, and then you can probably reassess, is it actually close to what the theoretical rating on paper said. So that's probably a way what you could do. But yeah, there is not a real way to see, my house is performing now like this. How does it translate to the previous star rating? I think there isn't really a proper form of process.
Are there things you can do with your builder, like as it's being built, to keep checking in that it's kind of being built to the as designed specs, so you don't get to the end and it's so wildly different? I know, Michael, you try to work more collaboratively with builders. How would someone kind of do that more effectively?
But different states have different numbers of inspections. So I think in New South Wales it's 9, in Canberra it's 3. So I'm not quite sure how you check to make sure a house is built properly if there's 3, maybe now 4. So asking for those additional inspections like I'm talking about. So for example, and I saw a cracker on this the other day, somebody sent me something with some thermal camera images. And so for insulation, as an example, you get a certificate from the insulation guys to say, this is what they've put in and this is what they've done. But then you put up a thermal camera and you can see where the noggins are. In this particular one, there were whole sections that had no insulation in them, right? And then you'd have another section and it was like this big, and that much had, they had not filled that component in it. So, for Brad, it sounds like your house is working well regardless, but if you want to go and have a play, go and either hire. I understand that you can actually hire some of the thermal cameras from libraries. I never knew about this until recently, but apparently you can. Or there are other ways of getting hold of them. And then just confirming through the glazing certificates. Another one, which again, from my background makes no sense, is that I've asked this of probably 20 certifiers, is that when they they get a glazing certificate from the window people, or from the builder actually, saying that this is what's gone in. And I asked, do you check that? No. Have you ever checked that? No.
And that actually brings me to another important point as well. I've seen it many times in the past that whatever during construction, sometimes, again, nothing against builders, but the builder comes forward and said, I have a suggestion, to save a little bit of money. Can we substitute this product? Or, there's a delivery delay or something. Can we substitute this product? And often people just swap over materials in their house, might be insulation, might be windows or something, without realizing that it's actually a worse product. So I've seen that many, many times. And like you said, Michael, the building surveyor often doesn't check if the insulation is actually what was specified on the plans, or if the windows are actually what was originally specified. So there's often people get, worse quality than what was actually planned for.
And again, I know 25% of the people here are builders as well. So this is not having a crack at the building industry as a whole, because it comes down to specific builders, and the people who are working in this space, and probably the people that are here, are going to be the ones who actually care and are doing the right thing. So it's about finding through that. But you talk to a whole lot of people, generally speaking, who've been in the industry for a long time. They don't want to do anything different. They've done the same way for the last 40 years, 30 years, whatever it is. It's what they do. They do it very, very well. But do they meet all those standards? Maybe not. But yeah, a house is shelter as well. So, what's the most important thing? Is to have the most perfect house, or is it to actually have a house over your head, a roof over your head? That's a whole other argument that needs red wine. But, so there is a balance.
That's a good point. So we could have these conversations, but in general, I just also want to maybe mention we're talking to many builders, and I think there's also a huge there's a great amount of builders who actually are absolutely passionate to deliver really good outcomes for their clients. So I think there's also a bit of a learning curve. But I think in particular when, for example, design and builders are working really well together, it can actually work. And this is where also a good client comes in and is supportive of that entire process with the trust and transparency. That means also maybe the future model of how we build is also far more actually transparent, and checks on these specific and in particular the high performing ticket items within the build far more rigorously. So it's not too complicated once you know what to look for and how to connect between the specified items and the as built. And that's exactly where we need to fill the gap to some degree. And I think there's an opportunity to make this actually also your outstanding positioning in the market and really contribute to better outcomes. So that's, I think, a great way also to lead actually into these bespoke design solutions you have developed, Michael, to tackle some of these issues. And so tell us a little bit more about Solar Butterfly and the other things you have packaged up actually as design solutions.
Yeah, thank you. So part of, and I'm going to go, I know I keep going backwards, but going back to what you were saying as well, it's part of the reason why it's the main driver is why we started investigating prefab. Because if the thing is made through a CNC machine and it comes out of, you spit it in, it comes out, it goes together, it's millimeter perfect. It's bloody hard to get that thing wrong. So yeah. by doing that, the quality of what's gone into the walls, that the connections are going to be right. You put decent windows in there, you do a blower door test at the back end, you pretty much know you've got what's on the label, right? That's taking risk out. Now, that's not for everybody. It's not for every region. I noticed, I think it's Brad putting some information up there about the dearth of checks in WA. So we're actually just signed off on a prefab home or panelized system for a house we've designed in Denmark, down near Albany in WA. And the couple of retiring university professors that wanted not necessarily passive house, but it's like a 9 and a bit star or whatever. But they wanted the thing to work, and it's in WA, so they are doing the prefab to make sure that they get what they want. And they know that they're going to do it. And that seems to be a big driver of a lot of the conversations we have around prefab, is particularly in regional areas where you may not be able to access as many good builders as you might be able to do in Melbourne or Sydney or Canberra. There are very good, there are very good builders everywhere, but it's harder to get them in regional areas. So prefab in particular for regional areas becomes a real important opportunity, whether it's for us or somebody else, to be able to ensure that that you get what you're paying for, that you actually get what's been designed. And that sort of drove us with these. There's a couple, I think, that you've got on the, sorry, I should have checked this a lot more, but a couple of our pre-design. So part of what we've done with our cabins, they're 60 to 90 square meters. They're pre-designed. We've done them so they're prefab. They're all sort of 9-star-ish, around that level, depending on orientation, obviously. The Solar Butterfly was done by Salai, who's my lead designer. She's an architect from Italy, 20 years in Italy. So I call her our ray of sunshine in the office. This is her favourite thing. So this was designed, if you can see the image on the right, on the top right, obviously to capture northern sun, but at the same time to be able to create a capture for water, with the butterfly roof, although we do have a lot of building issues around box gutters, but that's a whole other story again. But doing it prefab, you can do it quite easily. And then obviously the ability to be able to put solar on the back, which is the major reason why we call it the Solar Butterfly. It's been very popular. I had somebody from Tasmania call me up only last week about this. But again, the design intent, everything we do from a design point of view, we don't go to passive house for everything. We're not the true believers in the passive house side of things. We use all the theory and the science and everything behind it, but we don't necessarily need to go to that level. But from a design and orientation, solar access, all that sort of thing, we really like this one.
Yeah.
We do. I wouldn't put it up there if we didn't like it, but
exactly. No, I just want also to highlight, I mean, size. Size plays a huge role. Like I said, size can be very modest, can be small by numbers, but it can still feel amazingly spacious. So the space is not necessarily defined just by size. And I think this is a real important lesson for all professionals to take on board if we truly want to create sustainable solutions and climate actions incorporating solutions, then I think size is one of the biggest opportunities you all have at hand, and this is exactly what we can only support. I think this is a really important message to spread out because of the simple fact that Australia is building the biggest homes, and with that comes possible also huge budgets, often enough, unfortunately, also wasted space generated, which in the end becomes only cluttered storage and nothing else. So all these retreat and rumpus rooms, they just become basically cluttered space. And I think that's exactly where we need to change a little bit the thinking. And I think in terms of energy efficiency, how we run these homes will play in future a significant role in how we look at the quality of homes and how we value homes as well. Because if we introduce energy efficiency ratings to homes and many other areas, maybe, there's also discussions on embodied carbon and other areas. So I think hopefully that will change also the perception and move that resale value to something more profoundly around quality and purpose. So with that said, there's some more actually really interesting packages and designs you have done. So the Kalkite Nordic Chalet, tell us a little bit, because I think it's also planned for Canberra surrounding. Tell us a little bit
So
more.
this is up in the snow, up near Jindabyne. Couple with a couple of young kids, mad skiers from Canberra. But they also wanted to look at this from a rental point of view. So this was designed, it's completely the wrong way around. So the view to the rear is the Lake Jindabyne, which is fantastic. And that's to the south. So we had to design this. You can see this, very prominent window to the front of the house. It's quite a private community where they are, but that is just to allow for the northern sun to be able to get in. And you can see the rear section there also has a little bit of a kink out, which with quite a large glaze space to be able to allow that to come through. But again, this has been done very much that this can be multi-generational as well. So the front component is actually a 2-bedroom standalone and can be, for a renting point of view, they can rent it out together or separately, but it's been done as a multi-generational home. So that the front component is a 2-bedder, the rear component is a 3-bedroom space. And obviously for this one, we've done it. This was looking at CLT or looking at some sort of other wooden interior, just from a biophilic design point of view. But this sort of structure, we've in every conversation, and I would imagine half of the people here are architects and designers. Every conversation we have with people is about longevity. How long is this house going to be here? How is the house going to grow with you? Not built for now, but built for the next 20, 30, 40 years. How's that going to work? So these guys, their kids are like 8 and 10. But they're building this with thinking about, well, what happens when the kids are 25, 30, wherever. So, when one of the things you talk about from a climate change sustainability is build it once, build it right, and not have to go back and knock it down in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. We do, some of the work in northern Canberra region, and you go in there and look at homes that are 15, 10 years old. There's cracks everywhere. There's gaps everywhere. There was a house I went to the other day that was 8 years old, and there was a gap of around an inch around one of the windows. And this is 8 years old. So, doing it right, doing it once might cost a little bit more, or, if you want to make it cheaper, make it smaller. But building it so that it is actually going to see you through for a long period of time, and you don't have to keep changing and therefore wasting materials, I think is a very important longer-term thought process. And again, I would imagine most of the designers that are on here are already doing that. I know you do, Simona. So
yeah.
Good.
This one was
Simona,
an interesting.
Sorry,
go.
Sorry, Michael. I just wanted to ask Simona, do you want to throw in any questions?
Oh, no, it's looking great.
All right.
It's, like you said, or maybe just one thing that probably you, Sonia, would know. In Germany, where I'm coming from, it's actually quite common that you typically have multi-generational homes.
Yeah.
So what it means, say a young couple builds a house, and then there is a, like an independent persons unit almost attached to it. There is one place that can just be rented out, separately. So while they don't have kids, that can help pay the mortgage. And then once you have kids, you incorporate that part into the house. And then if they move out, you can rent it out again, or, your parents can move in. And the houses are just done in a way that they're way more flexible, either to create income or to grow and shrink with you. And what frustrates me in Australia, or especially in Melbourne so much, is that rule with the secondary dwelling, and that you're not allowed to have 2 kitchens in a house. And it's getting a bit easier now with the change with the small dwelling on the lot. But yeah, it just makes so much sense to create your houses that A, they can potentially give you some income, and B, to grow and change with you, that you can really live with them for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, or the whole family can stay in them. So
yeah, absolutely. I think in particular when we are looking at Melbourne, like these the urban sprawl, and there's everywhere basically, even in the inner suburbs, there's really big blocks of land often enough. So there's a huge opportunity to make that work, to contribute actually to additional housing, and to ease actually that pressure on the entire housing landscape, and add some rental properties to the market and so on. I think we really need to rethink that, because in future we are only facing a mounting demand actually in housing. So there's no way that we can just keep that limited. We need to find creative ways to work with that. And I think that's one way to look at it. And I think the intergenerational idea of a home that is a little bit modular to different life phases is a great way to look at it. It's a great opportunity really to make even the build economically efficient. So yeah, I think it's a perfect way to think about. So Nordic Twist, this is also a really interesting design. So tell us a little bit about that one.
I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go backwards. Sorry. I know you're going to get sick of me doing this, but
No.
so I'll give you an example of the ludicrousy of this. So we've got a client at the moment. We're doing some work in Hawker for those people who know Canberra. These guys have got 2,500 square metres. They're truly into their 70s. She's not infirm, but getting there, right? They've got kids who they want to support as well. And we've tried everything to see what we could do. They've got about 120 square metre home, and they want to have something else for them as well. So, we looked at, could we subdivide this? What could we do? How could we go about it? And even with the new rules that they've just brought in with ACT, the only thing they can do is put 120 square metre space on it and subdivide the land, or they can put a 90 square metre granny flat, right, and keep it as one title. Now, this is nuts, right? So these guys just do not need this space, but they don't want to leave there. They've been there forever. So what we've done to deal with that is we've actually designed just a small addition for them, because she needs more room around what they're doing. We've then designed, they're going to use the solar butterfly at the rear of the house, which they will longer term move into, and one of the kids will move in there. But we've had a guesstimate that when at some point they're going to allow subdivision of these things. So we've actually created like an informal subdivision line so that there's 1,004 square metres, I think, that can be subdivided off. And we've actually done all the setbacks and everything for all of this based around a future potential subdivision, because that is what we think should actually be happening. And so we're actually building this whole thing based around the potential for them to subdivide in the future. But that, is that going to happen? I don't know. Right? Okay. But it's just nuts that 2,500 square metres and they can only have these two little things on it. It's crazy.
Yeah, that sounds really crazy. And I think this is where things need to change in future to utilize more the available space. And in particular, like with blocks of land like these, you have certain infrastructure around. There's big opportunity to make that work. Yeah, and it's a shame that not much more is possible. And I think this is exactly where regulatory and changes are really needed, and better outcomes hopefully achieved then in future.
So Nordic Twist, just very quickly, because I'm just looking at the time.
Yep.
So this is, again, just another response to having something really, really simple. We've made it look interesting really by the cladding and the roofline, but the actual structure itself is really, really simple. For this one, we've actually got a couple of different roof lines we can do. One of them looks mid-century, one of them looks like a Nordic Twist, but it's based around having a really, really simple tunnel of a property that is really simple to be, either pre-made or made on site, but preferably pre-made for us. And that we can add on, whether it's one or two. We've actually designed a 3-bedroom one as well if somebody wanted to go to 3-bedroom. And you just add on that length, and effectively we could end up easily with a 3-bedroom one of these under 100 square metres. No problems at all. Unfortunately, most of the regs only allow us to go to 90 square metres for that secondary dwelling, so therefore we've had to keep it under that. We could actually get 3 into a 90 square, but most people want a larger living space, so we're actually having to respond to the market for that. But for people who were zoned to be able to do something a little bit more, 100 or 120 square metres with a derivative of the Butterfly or a Nordic Twist or one of those, you can do a 3-bedroom home really, really comfortably for 120 square metres. Absolutely no problem at all.
Yeah.
Don't have to have something big. I know that's anathema to most of the market, but you can.
That's the standard in most other countries, 120 square meters and 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Micah, tell us a little bit, like, if someone is interested in, like engaging you around that design package because it's well thought through, it might suit them. So how does it work? What's the process? And where, what is included and what else needs to be considered? So tell us a little bit about that.
So the 3 businesses are designed to either work together or separately. So, as an example, we're actually doing all of the drafting design work for another prefab company because, they know we've got some experience in it. So we're actually helping them on that. My goal, I'm old and ugly enough these days that, sort of the business will look after itself. Our goal is to make sure that we can have an impact on how the built environment changes in Australia, right? That's what our goal is. So however that's going to get there. And I think the windows and the energy assessments is going to be the biggest component, but that's fine. So we engage with architects, we are engaged with other energy assessors, we are engaged with builders, other prefab. It actually doesn't matter how somebody wants to engage with us. Somebody can, the people in Denmark, for example, we're doing the design, the energy analysis and the prefab side of things, and that's great. Other people will just come back to us for some windows. Other people will just come to us for some energy analysis and how that's going to work for their home. We're actually doing quite a lot of work. Simona and I have been talking about this for builders in particular, or people who want their home to work. So I had a well-known name in this region, at least. We were talking about it yesterday. And we're going to do a passive. This guy doesn't want a passive house, but he wants a house that's going to perform really, really well. He again wants to understand. I think Brad had some stuff around this, and we are going to use the passive house analysis to educate him and to inform him and his family. It's mainly him that's driving the whole thing. Around how the house is going to perform so that they can make choices as to what they do with their money. Right? So we're not precious around this. So we build a model, a baseline model, and then scenario test it, and then with a client actually walk through and spend about an hour and a half scenario testing using PHPP of the passive house package. And a lot of people will roll their eyes at looking at a spreadsheet for an hour and a half, but it actually works. What we find is by the time we get through all this, somebody will really know how the house is going to work, what are the drivers, and can make an informed choice. And to me, that allows you to do whatever you're going to go and do, right? We're not precious about that, whether our clients or we do it for a number of architects around here and a couple of builders as well, where we've got no other engagement with them at all. But people can then really make a choice as to how to spend their $100. So we don't sort of have a one size fits all, Sonia. People come to us for all of it, part of it, some of it, one of it. I'm quite agnostic.
In general, they could get
give me a call, pretty much. Yeah.
And they could approach you also for the full basically package, even to deliver. And I think we have here something which is quite interesting in my opinion, because this is also showcasing the panel system. And this is exactly like the prefab panel system. For example, at the lower picture, you see the window system. So I think you can actually deliver pretty much from design to the as-built solution. And this is a really interesting process to consider. And it's high performing, and it considers a lot of the good things in it. So yeah, I think in particular, like including all the efficiency calculations, the ratings and everything. So it's a full service, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. So exactly what you said, it depends what you want, what you need, and then it can be catered towards that solution. So that's a great way.
We think our biggest impact can be, because that's what we're here for now. And it sounds grandiose, but it's actually what drives us, is to have some impact. Is the research, and being able to help people with that research, whether it's individually or more broadly. And we know that the windows are the thing. Every house has windows in it, right? And so if we can help people to, if they're, you can change one line in your procurement as a builder, or you can do a couple of things. We had one energy rating we did for a very large builder, and you would think in Cronulla in Sydney it would be fairly simple to hit. This is old days when they only had to get 5-star. You would think it would be fairly simple to get one in Cronulla with everything. They hit 2.9. So they came to us. It was the first thing that we did for them, was an energy rating, and it took us 20 hours and 12 design changes to get the bloody thing to be 5-star without costing a whole lot of money, because the client didn't have a whole lot of money, right, to change. So we got it down to $5,000, and that was without changing windows. But there were 12 design changes. It was challenging, shall we say. And just for giggles, I thought, right, let's just chuck in some decent UPVC windows, and if we just change that one line item, what would have happened? And it went from 2.9 to 6.9.
Wow.
Just with changing that one line item.
Yeah.
Now they just about fell off their chairs when we showed them that. They're not doing that because there was a price differential and the client was really on the budget, right? But for changing one line item to change 4 stars, it was pretty nuts, right? And they just couldn't understand how that could be the case. And I did suggest to them that it was because of the crap windows that they had in there to start with. But when you got U values starting at 6, that's not so good, right? Yep. Yeah. Simona, your face, exactly.
Yeah, oh God, U value of 6. I just need to quit just hearing this.
I know. When I was in Poland, I think I told you about this. When I was in Poland, I was meeting some people and I said, as an example, we're trying to help people and they have a U value of 6. And this lady at the window came, no, that's all right. And she stopped. She said, you said 0.6, right? It's like, no. Move the decimal place. She had no words after that.
I think in many European countries, when you confront them with anything we have here in terms of quality, what we call like basic quality, they basically just they can't comprehend that. And I'm saying that not just through the view of countries which face, like harsh winter climate, where we have clear minus temperatures, There's also, like, for example, even in Mediterranean countries, we have fairly good high-performing Windows systems and other things. And it makes such a difference. The quality of these things, they last much, much longer. They contribute to low energy homes, and it's so affordable actually in the long term. And Europe, like I know that even from Germany, the energy prices have gone through the roof, even when we were living there. So having a good performing home, again, it doesn't has to be like the highest performing, but something solid, and that's the standard nowadays. So I think this is the big difference. We are still catching up to some better standards here, and I think all the initiatives we are doing here is really, really important for the future housing stock and even the property value you might achieve actually in the future. So it's a really important investment to think carefully about.
And I was in China before, also visiting another sort of window group. We're helping them get into prefab and everything. And they're the largest window company in China. And they have to deal with everything from just north of Hong Kong through to Mongolia. They were heading out to Mongolia. These guys are probably the biggest passive house product manufacturers in the world. And it was really interesting chatting to them around how you go from an incredibly humid environment like Hong Kong out into Mongolia, and the differences. The products end up relatively similar. You just got to think differently, right? Simona, when we did the passive house course, there was somebody there from Darwin doing the course. It still works. It's science is science. It's not passive house. It's not anything like that. It's just science, right? And building science. Doesn't matter where you are. It's just thinking about it differently, and how you actually execute it is different in these different environments. So, this is one of the things around passive house that I have a love-hate relationship, but it's the science is what drives it, right? And if you take that into any environment and then see how it works in conjunction with other sort of building physics issues, you're going to get a bloody good home, right? And that's what we're here to do.
Yep, absolutely. Michael, you have joined also Evitat as one of the members of the responsible business community. So tell a little bit, what do you see in Evitat? How would you like to approach, and what's the reason actually for you to join this community?
Well, you as a starting point, right? Right. No, I was really taken by your passion initially around what you're trying to do. And impact is what we're here for, right? In the end, the rest of the business side will look after itself if we're there about impact. And I think what you're trying to do with Evitat will have impact, right? And my reason for joining up is to see what we can do to support the community around this, about how we can come up with ways of reducing the carbon footprint, but making it affordable. I want to take money out of the equation. If it's about money, then it's about money. If we can take money out of the equation and educate people and show them the research as to how to make this, and then give people simple steps to get through there, then that's how we can all have an impact on what gets built in Australia, and then ultimately from a climate change point of view. But I think the first word there about health is a really important thing that doesn't get spoken about enough. You briefly alluded to it, but I was talking to the head of a very large fund through the Australian government, and talking about health in a particular sector. And he said it had not come up once. And this is a very, very large, we're talking billions of dollars this guy's allocated across things. And health had not come up once because it was all about the money. My personal view is that obviously we have to do what we have to do for climate change and for sustainability and all the rest of it. But in the very short term, I actually think the health benefits are going to be more important, because we're going to see those outcomes sooner than we're going to see climate change outcomes. And I think, if I talk to the Chinese group that we were with, they're pivoted away from talking about energy efficiency and talking about health, because the conversation around health is more interesting and it's more engaging to a whole lot of people, but it's also now. You go into a place, if you're crook, you were saying something about with asthma, you've got bad asthma, you've got bad allergies, you've got, mental health conditions. Being in a calm environment makes an enormous amount of difference. We had a community housing group. They had a board meeting in my office. This is my office. So they had it just over there. And one of the board members, who's a friend of mine, he's blind, degeneratively blind and profoundly deaf. And so we've won some design awards for this, but I said to them, right, everybody else shut up. James, how do you feel in this space? And it was really interesting. So his comment was, as I walked in, I could feel my hearing aids turn down. He said, I know exactly where everybody is and what you're doing. I can do it. He said, very, very rare. He said the only time that he can recall that he felt as calm was when he was a kid and he was getting his hearing tested. And they go in the booths, and you go into the little booths, and they've got the perforated insulation sitting within inside that. He said that was the only space that he felt an equivalent sense of calm and knowing exactly where he was. Now, you throw that into the mental health for, across NDIS, the, SDA portfolios, all the way across there, and some of these other, community housings and, all that sort of region there. That's the sort of stuff that can really have a societal impact sooner rather than later, I think.
Yeah.
And if I can jump there in, Michael, that's a really good point. Because especially people in the passive house industry or high-performing homes, we're always talking about whatever carbon footprint and energy efficiency and save the planet, which we're all for. But sadly, many people don't believe in those things, or they don't care. Or, they say, I can't spend any more money on the energy efficiency or saving the planet. But when you suddenly start talking about their health or their family health or their children's health, that's when it gets important. So I think we have to change our narrative a little bit, and not just, like you said, not just talk about energy efficiency, but talk more about those things, because many, many people will be more receptive to that than just, saving the planet, to say, blindly.
Yeah, I think all these things are interrelated and they all connected. So, but when we run, for example, the surveys during the webinars and even with the community, health is always right at the top. So health is really at every conversation, right in the center. And we are sometimes also at expos and talk actually with a lot of renovators and people who want to build. Health is a centerpiece. And when you drive the conversation through health, it becomes easily connected also with aspirations like low carbon, doing some climate actions, with the spend and with the investment they want to do. But then it all falls into place, and it all makes sense. When we talk only about abstract numbers, it often is hard to connect. So yes, I totally agree with both of you. I think health is a great driver of conversation, and we should actually put it right at the top. That said, I want to also introduce maybe the current two features on Avitat. One is, of course, to explore materials, products, which are all vetted as well. That means we, in general, require, before we even list any of the products, that every single sustainability claim out there needs to have evidence. And we use that evidence, we digitalize that evidence, and we connect that with, for example, needs and aspirations, and put certain recommendation forward. So this is how it becomes a very bespoke system to look at certain material or even renewable product solutions. There's also ventilation and much more. And it's growing. It's growing with every onboarded manufacturer. And we have absolute amazing new products also moving into the market, or products which might haven't been as known in the Australian market, but have been actually used sometimes in some cases even for decades. So explore that. We have also listed and vetted professionals like even Simone and Michael. What it requires basically to have evidence in terms of the projects you have delivered, and they need to meet certain criteria. And every single professional listed on Evitat meets these like a range of criteria with the projects they have done for clients. So we have also an integrated logbook, like I mentioned already. Feel free to explore. I can jump into that very quickly if we have a few minutes, because I know we are pretty much over time. So here you can start your logbook and really explore, for example, when you want to add for certain even design principles like passive solar and much more, you can add these things, you can save them, and you will see how it contributes. Certain things purchased, engaged with suppliers, manufacturers, or even professional will be added automatically to the logbook and are validated data. And this is exactly how we want to grow actually towards validating also and contributing to the value of the property and future-proofing, making it future ready, connecting that in future also to finance opportunities, but also insurance and much more. So I invite anyone who wants to explore Evitat, wants to be part of that community, feel free to join. It's all for free, for in particular for homeowners, residential renters. Yeah, feel free to join. And any professional who wants to become and talk with me about the opportunity to become a member, please reach out to us. We are more than happy to talk about that. So I want to say a big thank you to everyone who was part of this really interesting discussion tonight. Michael, thank you so much for sharing all your insights, golden nuggets of experience. Thank you also, Simone, for joining and sharing your Passive House expertise and experience, and Daniel for managing everything in the background. So we will soon announce the next webinar. So stick with us and look out for the next email coming around, and hope to see you all then in the next webinar as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
See you
everyone.
all.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.